Alright, so I've had a request from one of my subscribers, a new subscriber, and I apologize because I'm drawing a blank on the name off the top of my head. However, I'm going to be doing some reading on the subject of Operation Highjump. This is going to start out on the Wikipedia page like my last. Operation Highjump, officially titled the United States Navy Antarctic Developments Program, 1946 through 1947, was a United States Navy operation organized by Rear Admiral Richard E. Byrd, Jr., USN retired officer in charge. Task Force 68, and led by Rear Admiral Richard H. Cruzen, USN commanding officer. Task Force 68. Operation Highjump commenced 26th August 1946 and ended in late February 1947. Task Force 68 included 4,700 men, 13 ships, and 33 aircraft. Operation Highjump's primary mission was to establish the Antarctic Research Base Little America 4. Highjump's objectives, according to the United States Navy report of the operation, were training personnel and testing equipment in frigid conditions, consolidating and extending the United States' sovereignty over the largest practicable area of the Antarctic continent, publicly denied as a goal even before the expedition ended. Determining the feasibility of establishing, maintaining, and utilizing bases in the Antarctic and investigating possible base sites. Developing techniques for establishing, maintaining, and utilizing air bases on ice, with particular attention to latter applicable of such techniques to operations in the interior Greenland, where conditions are comparable to those in the Antarctic. Amplifying existing stores of knowledge of electromagnetic, geological, geographic, hydrographic, and meteorological propagation conditions in the area. Supplementary objectives on the Nanook expedition are smaller equivalent conducted off eastern Greenland. And this is cool, interesting stuff. It's just a random website. But I liked it because it has a few pictures. These are supposed to be declassified pictures, UFO evidence. And it's my opinion that these were just crafts that were created by the British and the Americans and the Nazis at the time. They were all being created by everybody. And now they're still flying saucers and stuff that we can't determine what it is, but it's just secret space program stuff or secret advanced tech for the Air Force, whatever. Okay, here we go. Operation Highjump, declassified pictures, UFO evidence. In 1947, Admiral Richard E. Byrd led 4,000 military troops from the U.S., Britain, and Australia in an invasion of Antarctica called Operation Highjump, and at least one follow-up expedition. Operation Highjump, which was basically an invasion of the Antarctic, consisted of 3 naval battle groups, which departed Norfolk, Virginia on December 2nd, 1946. They were led by Admiral Richard E. Byrd's command ship, the icebreaker North Wind, and consisted of the catapult ship Pine Island, the destroyer Brownson, the aircraft carrier Philippine Sea, the U.S. submarine Senate, 2 support vessels Yankee and Merrick, and 2 tankers Canisted, and Capacan, the destroyer Henderson, and a float plane ship Karatuk. A British-Norwegian force and a Russian force, and some Australian and Canadian forces were also involved. Operation Highjump has become a topic among UFO conspiracy theorists who claim it was a covert U.S. military operation to conquer alleged secret underground Nazi facilities in Antarctica and capture the German Vril flying discs, or Thule Mercury-powered spaceship prototypes. This has always been denied by the U.S. military. It's very plausible. But new declassified pictures from Operation Highjump show some very odd details that do not fit in with the official story. Just before the end of World War II, two German provision U-boats, U-530 and U-977, were launched from a port on the Baltic Sea following a steady stream of supplies that was carried out throughout the closing stages of the war. Reportedly, they took with them members of the anti-gravity disc research and development teams carrying notes, drawings, and designs for German flying discs. The last of the most vital disc components were on these vessels. Much of the technology and hardware that the Allies were looking for concerning the Nazis' secret weapons program had been transported to the base during the course of the war. This included the notes and drawings for the latest saucer or aerial disc designs and designs for the gigantic underground complexes and living accommodations based on the remarkable underground factories of Nordhausen in the Harz Mountains. The two U-boats duly reached the new land of New Schwabenland in Antarctica, where they unloaded everything. They then arrived in Argentina several months later, minus the original cargo and most of the crew. Rumors began to circulate that even though Germany had been defeated, a selection of military personnel and scientists had fled the fatherland as Allied troops swept across mainland Europe and established themselves at a base on Antarctica, from where they continued to develop advanced aircraft based on extraterrestrial technologies. Report of Operation Highjump, the U.S. Navy Antarctic Development Project, 1947. The fact is that there was plenty of evidence at the time to indicate that as late as 1947, elements of the Kriegsmarine, or German Navy, were still very much active in South Atlantic, operating either out of South America or some base previously unsuspected in the Antarctic. Many stories were circulating at the time. USS Senate, 1946, Operation Highjump. Upon the Navy's return, all information was classified top secret, and the only person to be talking about the mission, the Secretary of the Navy, James Forrestal, was quickly institutionalized in Bethesda Naval Hospital, psychiatric ward, and later died from a suspicious suicide. The Nazis embraced the occult and believed that the earth could be hollow. They also believed that hollow center could be inhabited by aliens. In fact, they believed this so much that one of their missions was specifically designed to find an entrance to the Earth's interior and make contact with the inhabitants for support in the war, should they be located in the UFO base. I just think it would be an ancient human civilization. This is airspacemagazine.com, airspacemag.com. Operation Highjump. A year after World War II ended, the United States Navy mounted a massive, though hastily planned, mission to the bottom of the world. The 3 Navy airmen, who in 1946 became the first U.S. casualties in Antarctica, see Executive Editor Paul Hoverson, asked Diane Olsen Bellinger, a historian of polar exploration and the author of Deep Freeze, the United States, the International Geophysical Year, and the Origins of Antarctica's Age of Science, University Press of Colorado, to talk about Highjump and its legacy. Bellinger. No, the United States Navy expedition had been in Antarctica for 100 years before that, not since the Charles Wilkes expedition of 1838 to 1848. Highjump was a significant illustration of the state of the world and the Cold War thinking at the time. The nuclear age had begun, and the real fears were that the Soviet Union would attack the United States over the North Pole. The Navy had done a training exercise there in the summer of 1946 and felt it needed to do more. The northern winter was coming, and Highjump was a quickly planned exercise to move the whole thing to the South Pole. Politically, the orders were that the Navy should do all it could to establish a basis for a land claim in Antarctica. That was classified at the time. A&S Admiral Richard Byrd, who led the Highjump expedition, had 13 ships, 23 aircraft, and 4,700 men. Quite a contingent. Bellinger, it was the largest naval expedition ever in Antarctica. Even the Operation Deep Freeze expeditions during the International Geophysical Year in the 1950s were a fraction of that. These were also newly released soldiers and sailors from World War II, and there were very few of those 4,700 who had any polar experience. So it is a little odd that they would have conjured up so many. The leadership ranks were very thin, especially in the flying ranks. A&S was Byrd able to accomplish all his objectives? Bellinger. No, Admiral Byrd by then was a minor player. His name, of course, was illustrious, and they wanted to make use of that. But in fact, while he had the titular control of the operation, the Navy really called the shots. From the research I've done, Byrd really wasn't well. He never really recovered, according to the people who knew him, from his time alone on the ice in 1934. As for the exercise, it was so brief and cobbled together. They were supposed to do a lot of photo mapping, but as one of the pilots, Conrad Gus Shin, who flew Douglas R-4Ds from the carrier USS Philippine Sea, told me, we didn't really know what we were doing. We didn't know about precision flying or what we were looking at. A&S. The only casualties on Highjump were the 3 Navy men killed in the George I airplane crash in December 1946. Do you think the Navy should recover their bodies? Bellinger. Well, there also are bodies from Operation Deep Freeze, and there's been no attempt to get them either. In Deep Freeze 1, there were 2 deaths. One was the tractor that went through the ice right when they got there in January 1956. Another tractor went down in a crevice and its driver was crushed. There were maybe 4 deaths, in deep freeze 2 or 3. And they're still happening. It's still a dangerous place. Where that high jump crash was sounded to me to be in a pretty tough place. When some of them were rescued, they were asked to walk the 9 or 10 miles to the shore because no airplane could land there to pick them up. They called it the Phantom Coast because you could never find it. A&S, how did Highjump help lay the foundation for further U.S. exploration of the contingent? Bellinger, it was the beginning of photo mapping there, and it helped people learn about the contingent when the IGY scientists, who of course were sitting in conference halls in Europe, were planning where to put stations in Antarctica during the IGY. They used what the high jump people had learned to help them make decisions. For example, there was a discovery in East Antarctica of an ice-free area that was bedrock and had water pockets that guided the building of stations there. It carries the name Munger Hills, after the high jump pilot who first flew over it. That's it. Well, see, I've looked and looked and looked. I couldn't find much information. I don't like how that they told us that there were deaths, but they didn't really tell us how the first people died in that plane. And I'm not sure exactly, but how I heard it originally was that they flew into an invisible barrier, like that this plane hit an invisible barrier and exploded, and that's when they knew that they were up against something that they had no idea what it was, and they just said, all right. They turned tail and ran, basically. They said, we're getting out of here. It's aliens. We're getting out of here. But I just think it's an ancient civilization, like the Nazis. I think what the Nazis really believed is that it was an ancient civilization. I don't think they believed it was aliens. I think that they thought it was the real or the ancient civilization. They were searching for them, and I think they found them. I think they found their way into Angartha. And when I come back on the subject, I think I'll dive into the mythologies of Angartha and all the other names for it throughout time, and that'll be part 2. But a huge thanks to anyone who watches this. That's my cat Chappie. and a huge shout out to the person who asked for this. I will check you out, and I'll probably leave your name in the comments, maybe, I don't know. Either way, thank you all. This has been Hidden Hand, tuning out.